set dressing is done, so we should be back. Hopefully that skipped for everybody for obvious reasons. I'll do that in editing, don't worry about it. Anyway, now that we have completed our set dressing, the next thing we're going to want to do is go about setting up the configuration for our objective areas and so on and so forth. So to do that, fairly simple. Well, yeah, fairly simple. We're gonna find an area far away from our AO. So yeah, this airfield's good. Right, so at this airfield, what we're gonna do is place everything that we need to set up the configuration for our mission. So this is now we're steering into territory of stuff I developed to make this a little easier. In your on your right hand side tab again, we're going to go to systems, so that's the modules, the things we use to set dress and so on and so forth. And we're looking for our SAEF subtree, so this thing will open up to all of our SAEF modules. Now when setting up the module based mission making stuff, so that's what I'm about to show you, we need to effectively configure the types of units we want to spawn in amongst other things in order to have our mission function using the modules we have available. So in order to do that, I'm going to come to this section of modules, and we're looking specifically for the modules that are config modules, so it'll say config dash something. So for configuration, we're going to use all of them. We're going to start with config spawning core. So this module is effectively the brain, right? So what that means is that in order for the configuration to be consumed and for the configuration to generate properly, we need one of these guys. We need a brain. Inside the brain, we have a couple of basic settings here. We're going to leave everything default because we're pretty confident we want the enemy side to be up 4. We don't want to block patrols or garrisons, and we want the triggers to disable themselves once they've been cleared. So that is all fine. But what we do want to do is set the area tag and also the name. So the name is specifically useful for Zeus when you're creating an area. And you want to be able to access these modules via Zeus, you need to set a name so that you can recognize what the area is called. So the area tag, or the config tag that we're going to use in this case, because the forces we'll be fighting are Russians, is RUS_area. This area tag is very temperamental. It must all be lowercase and no spaces. So RUS_area is the tag that we're going to be using here. You can name this effectively whatever you want. You could call it RUS tag if you RUS tag if you're that concerned about naming a tag. I generally keep everything in the name of area. It's unimportant as long as you follow the all lowercase with no spaces rule. Oh, and avoid special characters for obvious reasons. Just underscore is useful in order to segregate what you're looking at. And the area name in this case is Russia, or Russian rather. Yeah, Russian is fine. We can call them Russian forces, why not? This is to say that, okay, for these areas, or for this area type, we're dealing with Russian forces. Right, so that is the brain configuration. The next thing we need to do then is to place one of each of the other type of config modules, and only one. There will be valid error messages. I'll show you how to go find those if for whatever reason your configuration isn't working. So we want an infantry configuration module. We want a light vehicle configuration module. We want a heavy vehicle configuration module, and we also want a paradrop vehicle configuration module. So we're going to be using all of these. All of these are required. This thing will moan if they're not present. So once you've configured all of your modules, you can go ahead and select the 4 new modules that you placed, your infantry, light vehicle, paradrop vehicle, and heavy. To select multiple, you just hold control while you're selecting, and then you're going to right click on the module. The first thing in the list is connect. So you want to say connect and then sync to, and then this will pop open this blue line from the 4 modules that we selected, and we want to connect them all to the brain. So now this brain knows about the power drop vehicles, infantry units, the light vehicles, and the heavy vehicles. So with the configuration core created, what we're then going to do is we're going to assign units effectively to each of these things. So in the case of Russian, we're going to make our Russian forces. So what I've done is I've gone to the top right tab, I've selected compositions, and I've selected up 4. Technically speaking, you can use any of these because the side of the unit spawn is defined by the configuration core module, but to keep things simple, we're just going to go with up 4 for now. I'm going to select Russia VDV, and I'm going to use infantry from EMR Desert. So I'll take a basic, let's do a squad with a GPMG and a marksman. And what we've got here is a sergeant, and a freighter, which I believe is a light anti-tankman, automatic rifleman PKP, 2 automatic riflemen, a machine gunner assistant, and a marksman. So because of the way this module works, right, what this thing does is it consumes all the units that we're about to synchronize to it, deletes them, and stores the class names for configuration for the mission setup. So there's a lot of big technical words. What you need to know is that having duplicates here is pointless because it uniquely identifies the units that are created here or consumed into the module. So I'm going to remove this duplicate for the PKP, and I'm going to make him just a regular rifleman. And then I'm also going to add a couple more because I want more than just this configuration for this. So we'll add 1, 2, 3, 4. So what I've done is I've just Control-C'd on the marksman and then Control-V'd him. I'm going to select these guys and sync them. Oh, no, actually, I don't want to sync. I want to group to. So select them, go to connect, say group to, and then group to the sergeant. So it consumes them all as the same group. Then I'm going to go to my, so in case you didn't know, the menu how I got to that menu is I've double clicked on these guys. So I'm going to go to my first marksman, my first duplicate marksman rather, and make him a medic, and not actually drag him all the way over there. The second guy I'm going to go to, and I'm going to make him, let's call it a grenadier with an RPG-7. So this guy will have RPGs available to him. I'm going to go with a rifleman with the GP25, which is just a grenade launcher. And I'm going to select a... What else do we want out of this guy? RPG assistant. Yeah, let's throw an RPG assistant in there. Right, so these are the class names that will be consumed by the module. So once I've created my group, the positioning of these guys is irrelevant. They will get deleted as soon as the mission starts. It's just for configuration purposes. We highlight all of these guys, right-click, connect, and sync to our config infantry units. So this config knows it's dealing with infantry units, and these infantry units are now synced to this configuration, so it'll consume the infantry units for the configuration of infantry units for our main brain. Similarly, with light vehicles, I'm going to switch from compositions to just regular objects. Go to Russia VDV and take a look at cars. So for light vehicles, I'm specifically interested in armed vehicles. So let's take this gas and this gas. So we've got 2 here. This is like these are 2 sort of light-ish vehicles. We can go have a look at our APCs. We'll consider a BTR-60 a light vehicle because it's not exactly packing cannons or anything like that. And under IFVs, we'll also consider. Nah, this guy's got a cannon. Do we really wanna? Yeah, we'll treat these guys That's heavy vehicles. Okay, so we got 3 light vehicles we're interested in. Pretty basic things. We similarly right-click, sync to the configuration for light vehicles. So for heavy vehicles, we want to add a BTR-80. We want to add a BMP, let's call it a BMP 2D or 2K. Let's do 2K because it's got reactive armor on it. And then we're going to pull out of the Russia VDV subtree and go to the TV subtree so we can get access to tanks. We're going to use the 2016 version of the T-72. We'll use the 2016 version of the T-90. Do I want to add? Nah. Okay. So these are enough for our configuration for heavy vehicles. So just to reiterate, these are the vehicles that will be spawned by the module system of spawners we're about to use. So I will show that shortly when we do the actual mission layout, but this is just for configuration purposes. And then for power drop vehicles, we're really only interested in one type of helicopter. I think this is just a regular Mi-8 and this is a transport helicopter, correct? Yeah, it's got no guns. Perfect. Okay, so we're going to just plop him down and we will synchronize him as well to our power drop vehicles. So that's it for the configuration. Once you've established or you've set up the brain and you've linked these modules to it, there's nothing really more you need to do for configuration there. When the mission starts, these guys will get consumed. I'll show you what happens now when that happens, and this will build our configuration for us. So in order to show you effectively how that works, we're actually just going to load in. So we know, let's just identify the airfield. We've placed them at this airfield near Abdera to the north. So we can go have a look at that with the camera now. And we're just going to, on the bottom right, you'll see there's a play scenario in single player. We're just going to launch it and let it load. Right, so how I access the camera is I go escape. You'll see there's a big debug console on the bottom left here. We have the camera button. That's the one I'm hovering over now. So we'll open that up and it pushes us into this camera. We're going to open up and we know that we placed the units at this airfield north of Abdera, so we just go have a look. And you can see here that they're all gone. So effectively what's happened is it's read them all in and it's turned them into configuration for our spawn areas. So if I just close the camera, if you want to view what this configuration looks like, we can self-interact, go to Tools, go to Admin Utilities, Automated Spawning, and then Export Config. You see there's a bit of a tree. This is your self-interact menu, in case that wasn't clear. And once you've selected Export Config, it'll copy that config to your clipboard. So this is a pretty good time to show you how we access stuff via Visual Studio Code. So I'm going to pop open Visual Studio Code and pull that in over here. And we can close all these things. And I want to go File, Open Folder. And then we want to navigate to our mission directory. I have this pinned, but obviously if you don't have it pinned, it's Documents, ArmA 3 Missions. And we're interested in our safe operation cleanser, so I'll select that folder and then click select folder down here, and what it'll do is it'll build or it'll open the folder tree for us in this editor. So you can see on the left hand side here I have all of my files. Right, so in the init mission setup file you can see here that I've copy and pasted this configuration here. If you wanted to use this configuration for multiple missions, so say you've worked out your template, you've got everything saved here, you want to copy this from mission to mission so that this configuration is always configured for you, you can just Control V this in here into this init mission setup file, which is in the root directory of the mission template, and it'll load this configuration for you without you needing to do the whole module thing in ArmA. But for the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to leave the modules there just so that you can see that it works sort of within the mission as well. So I'm just going to pull that out and make sure this is saved, and then we're going to go back to ArmA. come on, load faster. Ugh, no, didn't want to do that. Okay, so mission configuration done. It's set there on your airfield. We're going to go back to our mission area. And the next thing we're going to do is go. Apologies, just going to get rid of this stuff. Okay, back to it. Right, so the next thing we're going to do is set up our actual mission flow in terms of enemy spawns and stuff like that. So now that we've done the configuration for the areas, we're going to go through the configuration for we're going to actually place these areas now. So we're going to go back to our first building. As you can see, it's still fortified, but it's locked behind all of these things down here. And what we're going to do is we're going to place a area module on it. So if you go to the top right again, our browser, we go to our systems. Under the SAEF tab, you'll see there is a spawn area module. So we can use this, in this case, over here to place our spawn area module. And this spawn area module has a couple things we're interested in, specifically the area tag. So these variables are all optional. That's if you want to override the configuration for this the spawn area. If you omit them, it'll just use the default configuration that we've already set up, so we don't need to worry about that for now. We're going to set this as a Rus area, so this needs to correspond exactly to the name you included in your config. If you're unsure of how you set it up, we can go to the config itself and we just Control-C this out of here. Come back to our spawn area and Control-V it in to make sure that the area tag is identical. And then the area size, there are 3 configurations: small, medium, and large. Effectively, what this dictates is how many guys are going to be spawned in each area, how many patrols will be created for each area, and the size of the area itself, like the physical in meters size. So I will get the specifics on each of these things for us now, actually, just so I can go over it. But this is all overridable as configuration. It's not overridable via modules yet. I'm still working on that, but it is overridable via mission setup. So if you wanted to do it that way, then you could go about doing it that way. So in terms of the actual setup, we're looking at the toolbox now. There's a lot of stuff going on in here, but we're specifically interested in the area. We can see for a large area, the base amount of AI we will get is 12. The base area size is 60 meters, and the base activation range is 500 meters. Similarly, for a medium area, base AI count is 6, base area size is 50 meters, and base activation range is 500 meters. And for a small area, the base AI count is 4, the base area size is 40 meters, and the base activation range is 500 meters. So these variables are overridable, as you can see here, with mission namespace variables, and there will be full documentation on how to do that on GitHub if you ever want to go that route. But as I said before, this is a basic tutorial. We're not going to cover these. We're just going to use the modules as they exist. So pop this back open again. We're interested in making this area small. And what we're going to do is we're going to block patrols for this area, because this is a hard point. It's not a compound. We don't want to have patrols walking around this thing. We just want guys to garrison this building. So we'll block the patrol, we'll make it a small area, and we'll set the area tag. And we'll leave the module there. And then similarly, we're going to want to do this for the rest of our defensive positions. So what I'm going to do is just unlock all 3 of them so we can see where our defensive positions are. We've got another one over here. So I'm just going to plop this down over here. Because I've copied the module with Control-C, Control-V, it will retain all of the information we already have set for that module. So it knows the block patrol, it knows the area size is small, and it knows what the area tag is. So we can copy this module again, and we want to go to our other defensive position, which I think is a little bit lower down. And we want to plop that module in over there. Right, so what these area modules do is they auto garrison and then auto create patrols for the buildings and stuff around these areas. So in this particular case, because we blocked the patrol, it's just going to auto garrison the building. But the auto garrison mechanism is clever. What it can do as well is auto populate emplacements if we have them. So in the case of this building, I want to set up a machine gun that sort of covers outside of the building. Now this terrain's a bit uneven, but it should play ball. I mean, we could set up the machine gun in the window, or maybe we just want to set it up out here. I'm going to go again to the top right, select objects, go to Op4, move down to Russia VDV and select a turret. And we're interested in a cord, which is a 50 caliber turret, and we're going to place him sort of over here, somewhere where he can't fall over if he loops around. Now this machine gun will be here, and when the garrison takes place, this machine gun will be auto-populated. Similarly, I want to... does this thing have view of the road? It does. So we've got an APC for this mission. We haven't placed it yet, but in my mind, in the scenario flow, we'll be using an APC. So what I want to do is also set up some hard points that are specifically catering to anti-tank stuff. So in this case, we're going to place an SPG-9 on the roof over here. So this thing will target. We pointed out the road as well, so the thing should see anything coming down that road. It's important to have counters to pretty much everything you're using, because you don't want it to be too easy. If you're running a mission with an LAV and the enemy has no anti-tank, then that LAV is effectively a god. There's no threat to it. So what we want to do in this case is make sure there are some threats available. And our last position over here, our hard point, we're also going to go put another cord down, because we're interested in making this available. Oh, also to note, because I've been placing these but I haven't explained, when you select a static weapon, if you place it by default, it'll get placed with a unit in it, because for obvious reasons this thing is mannable by a unit. But the auto garrison system obviously will not populate that thing if there's a unit already in it. So what we do is we place it by making it empty. If you hold Alt, you can see the icon. I don't know if it's visible. Let's hold it in front of the tree. You can see the icon there is red. If I hold Alt, it goes yellow. And that yellow icon indicates that this thing is now empty. So it'll place it without a unit in it. Anyway, so we place some static emplacements in these hard points, and we've also placed the spawn areas for those hard points, so we can consider these things complete. So what we'll do is we'll lock these guys back up, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to shift all of this stuff that's sort of catering to these defensive positions into a new folder tab in Eden, so that we can just better keep track of this stuff. So I'm going to call these defensive positions for this new folder tab, and I'm just going to pull these guys and all the spawn area modules for the defense positions in there, and then of course the defensive positions themselves. So now if we just collapse all of our windows, we can lock this guy, and the defensive positions will be locked with us without us being able to edit that or the modules that control them. Right, similarly, we're going to do the same thing for spawn areas on our compound. So let's go open these guys up. There's 9 of them. We want to go place a spawn area module. So much the same as we did last time. This is RUS_area for the area, but instead of making these compounds small, we're going to make them large. Oh, in fact, let's make them medium. And we're not going to block patrol in this case. So what this will do is it'll also generate patrols to patrol around these areas that we've created. So I've popped down a module. We'll put it about there. That should consume all the buildings in the region, and we're just going to copy and paste that. And similarly, we're going to do that over here. And we'll put this module inside this building. Right, so this is a bit of a big one. So what we're going to do is we're going to split up the modules that get placed here. We're going to place a medium one down here. We'll put another one up here, but we'll make it small. and we'll block the patrol because we don't really want to include more than one patrol here. We'll put another small one over here and another, let's call it a small one over here. So all these small guys are blocking their patrols. We don't need to generate more patrols than the ones that will get generated from this guy. The patrols that get generated from this medium spawn area should cover the compound as a whole. So we're not really too concerned with doing more there. I think we also maybe want to go through the trouble of placing some more emplacements. So much like the static weapons that were placed, we can do the same with vehicles. It'll automatically garrison into the vehicle's gun. So what we'll do here is slap a gas with a turret on it down, sort of just in front of this building. So this thing will be able to turn and engage anything that comes over this ridgeline here. Now, an important thing to remember about vehicles when placing them is that if the players can access a vehicle, they will. And what that means is that if you've got vehicles that are like just defaultly placed vehicles, the players are going to get them, they're going to get their hands on them, they're going to drive them around, they're going to stuff with your mission. So what you want to do is edit them in some way to make that impossible. Generally what I'll do is I'll double click on the vehicle. I will go to the fuel slider inside the vehicle and drag it all the way to 0. So even if they do figure out a way to get in, it's going to have no fuel. And then I'm going to change the lock state of the vehicle to locked for players. So what that'll do is it'll stop the vehicle from being able to drive around, which is good. And it'll also lock it for players, which means that a player cannot get in the vehicle and mess with it. It also locks the inventory for players, which is quite useful if you don't want them accessing extra stuff that's left inside these vehicles. So we'll make it lock for players, we'll set the fuel to 0, but it will still be auto-garrisoned by any AI that are spawning out of this module. We're going to copy this. No, actually, we'll place a new one. I want to, because this is quite a big barricade, right? I want to slap a vehicle down here, an APC. So let's put a BTR-80. Why not? We're gonna have an LAV. We'll have enough munitions to take care of these things if we need to. So we'll put another BTR-80 down over here. Similarly, we will set fuel to none and we'll lock it for players so they can't accidentally get in it. And then we'll leave that BTR there. And maybe we also want to throw a static gun in here. So for turrets, we go to our cord and we slap this guy down. I'm sure by now you're getting the gist of what I'm trying to accomplish. I'm setting these defensive positions up so that they are configured properly to collect information for players or to garrison vehicles that are lying around or static guns or whatever the case may be. So effectively what you're trying to do is you're trying to make the scenario difficult but not too difficult, right? Just having infantry around makes it very easy for a team with a vehicle to take care of those infantry. Obviously you'll still have to breach garrison buildings and stuff, which will add a little bit of complexity. But not a full set of complexity. I cannot emphasize the importance of how powerful a static emplacement can be. Something that's difficult to deal with, that has a good amount of range. It's very important to have that kind of thing in the way as an obstacle for the players to try and overcome. So you can see here that this thing is this compound is very front oriented, right? It can take on a lot of contact coming from the front of the compound. But if the players get wise to what's going on here, push up this gully and move around the top, they'll have a much better time taking the compound. It's stuff like that that you want to encourage. Make it a challenge for the players. You don't want to make it impossible. Like don't create a defensive position that's untakeable. That being said, I don't think a defensive position that is untakeable exists. But it's important not to make something too hard, otherwise it will discourage the players and make them not want to carry on, you know. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip the placing of more vehicles and stuff for the time being because I want to speed this up. I don't want to take too much time in setting this up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to our medium area size thing and grab the module and go plunk them down in all of our other compound areas. And I will swing back through and place some vehicles and other stuff in a second. I'm gonna cut here and we'll come back to this once everything's been placed. Right, I'm back. Okay, so we've sorted out the emplacements, putting them down, setting them up, getting them configured in positions that could be useful, place some extra vehicles that will be garrisoned, and so on and so forth. So that is all done now. What I'm going to do is take the compounds and all the new stuff that I've placed. So it's all of these things. We make a new thing and call this compounds. We're going to drag all of our spawn areas that are now relevant to those compounds into here. And then we're going to take all of our compounds and drag them in as well. Right, so we can now lock that, and all of the compounds are configured with their units, their defensive positions, their turrets, all of that stuff. The next thing we're going to do is, just quickly because I've remembered this now and we should have done it earlier, is we're going to take all the config modules and place them in a new folder called config. And then we're going to take all the units we've placed with those config modules and just drag them in here so we can lock and hide this. Just so that we're not concerned with seeing what's going on here. You know, it's not relevant to the mission. We don't really want to deal with it. We just know that we've set up the config. Okay, so the next thing we need to do, now that we have areas set up, we've got patrols, we've got garrisons, like we've got pretty much a mission. We want to add a little bit more dynamicness to that mission. So in order to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to create some counterattacks that push through whenever we take a compound. So in order to do that, we're going to use the hunter-killer modules. So if you go to the top right and you go to systems, we have AI spawn hunter-killer modules. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up a set of positions for these modules. So what we want to do is, let's backtrack. There are a couple different ways to use hunter-killer modules, right? The first is that it'll spawn a hunter-killer right on the spot. So if I pop this module down and I put this here, and I define the spawn tag as Rus_area, I select the squad sizes for their search area is 4 kilometers, so that's the area they will hunt for players in. You can also make that shorter if you'd like the players to be able to escape the AI effectively. What will happen here is that the hunter-killer will spawn on this module, right on top of it, and they will then proceed to hunter-killer from it. But if we'd like to make that more dynamic, like we want a hunter-killer squad to spawn on this module, but we don't want them to spawn right now, we can pair this with a trigger, and also we can set up the dynamic positioning. So in order to do that, we can select this use dynamic position option, and what we're also going to do, because we have set up the power drop vehicles, we're going to make them power drop into the AO instead of just having them spawn specifically on wherever it is, on the dynamic position. We'll select dynamic position, we'll select power drop. Now in order for this dynamic position to work, we need to put down a hunter-killer position module, and we need to set the tag on that hunter-killer position module so it knows what configuration to spawn or what dynamic configuration that is. And then we need to find a place for these guys to come in. So if we're dealing with paratroopers, we want to give them sort of an open area to land. So we'll say this position is over here. And we'll add a couple more of these just for some flavor. It randomly selects a position close to the player, but not too close to the player for the drops to happen, or the dynamic positioning to take place. If you negate the power dropping, and you just make it dynamic positioning, it'll pick one of these close enough to the player for the engagement to happen soon, but not close enough for the players to spot the spawning. So we'll put one there, we'll put one there, we'll put one up here, we will put another one down over here. Where's another good place for a power drop? I suppose over there. We'll put one over here. We'll put one in this sort of like low-lying area over here. We'll put another one in this low-lying area over here. Yeah, and that's good. Okay, cool. So we set up hunter-killer positioning. The next thing we're going to do is, now that we set up this module, and we're making it paradrop, we'll pick the squad size. So let's say this will be a reasonably sized QRF. It'll be an 8-man squad. Search area is 4 kilometers. We'll configure this, and then what we need to do is we need to link this to a trigger. So triggers are, again, on the top right under triggers. You find a trigger here. We'll select one. We'll make this trigger size, let's say 100 by 100. Oh, no, that's not what we want. 100 by 100. So my typing skills are horrible today. We'll set the activation to any player. So this is any player that is within this trigger. There are the activation cores, right? And then the activation type we're going to change from present. So if it was present, as soon as the player enters this trigger, it triggers the hunter-killer. But if the activation type is detected by op4, which means that op4 has spotted us, then it'll create the hunter-killer, or it'll execute this trigger as soon as any player in the trigger area is detected by op4. So what we then want to do once we've created this trigger is maneuver this to sort of the central area of our compound, and then we take the hunter-killer module, which at this point is a 6-man. Did I say 6-man? No, I want 8-man. I want 8-man to come. Is a 6-man 4-kilometer search area paradrop squad that uses a dynamic position. So we select that and then we sync that to our trigger. And what will happen now is when this trigger activates, so when a player is spotted by any op4 within this trigger zone, this module will kick off, and because it's using dynamic position, instead of spawning the hunter-killers directly on the module, it'll spawn them on, or it'll say the paradrop area rather is one of these dynamic positions. So you don't need to sync the dynamic positions or anything, it'll just pick them up and use them. And similarly for all the, do we want to do it for, yeah, we'll do it for all the compounds. We'll have a 8-man retaliation team for every compound that gets taken. So similarly for that one, this one's going to be a bit different. So we'll make it much the same, except what we're also going to do is include a vehicle. So we're going to get rid of the dynamic position because we want to be explicit about where these vehicles are spawning, and we're going to get rid of paradrop because we can't paradrop when we're dealing with vehicles. We'll make it a, let's make it a light vehicle. We're not too bombastic about hitting them, and the squad size is irrelevant. If you selected a light vehicle, you see here, it'll be overridden if there is a light or a heavy vehicle set. We'll keep the search area as 4 kilometers, and we'll create that. But because it's spawning on this thing, we wanna move it to somewhere where it's not exactly. Maybe we should use a dynamic position. We haven't placed any on the roads. No. We will go place them. So, how far away is this? More than close enough. Okay, so because this is a 4-kilometer area or search area, we want our vehicles to sort of to spawn in more inland. Like so far as scenario flow is concerned, right? If the Russians were to control this area, it would make sense that they would keep their heavier vehicles more inland, or their QRFs for that matter, more inland. So what we're going to do is we're going to place this hunter-killer spawn module, but we want it to still get triggered by that guy. So we're going to connect this, sync it, and throw it to this trigger. So when this trigger activates, we'll bring in a vehicle. But now that I'm thinking about it, because it's only one and it's for a large compound, we'll make this a heavy vehicle. Let's not use a light vehicle in this case. So once we've done that, the next thing we want to do is carry on with our placement of spawn areas. So let's go with small QRF for these guys. And then for this overall town, what we'll do is we'll make it a much larger QRF and a much larger search zone. So now that we're dealing with the large town, and the areas are sort of densely populated, we want to make this more more like we're facing a large counter-attack once we've cleared the zone, right? So in order to do that, we're going to change, no, in fact, we're going to leave this, this is fine, but we're going to add a couple more. So in this case, we're going to have 4 hunter, or we'll do 3. We'll have 3 hunter-killer squads retaliate for the capture, or rather the entering of this town as a QRF. So that once we're in this town, we've kicked off the battle, we're going to have a couple guys sort of landing behind us. So we're going to have to worry about them as well as deal with what's ever in the town. And maybe we will also want to include like 1 or 2 more vehicles, because we're interested in making things interesting. So we'll move these a little bit further back. So we've got a bit of time before we have to deal with anything, and we'll make it a light vehicle. And then we'll also make this one, but we'll make this one a heavy vehicle. So we'll have a 2 vehicle retaliation for taking the town. We're also going to want to sync these to our trigger, so that the engagement in the town is more interesting. We're going to have people behind us, we're going to have guys moving through the town. It'll make the engagement exciting amongst, you know, having to actually clear the town being difficult in its own right. Cool, so that's Hunter Killer taken care of. What we're going to do is move this guy to its own set of... no, this doesn't like it, okay. We'll just move this like this. We'll call this Hunter Killer, its own umbrella. We'll move all these triggers in here, and then we can lock these guys. But because it's synchronized, we're... Oh wait, no, I don't want to. I want to lock in general, and because it's synchronized, you're gonna have to hide it if you don't want to see those funny blue lines. Cool, so that's Hunter Killer taken care of. And now that that's all complete, we're gonna add in just a little bit more flavor. So what we're going to use to do that is some mortars. So in order to do that, we're going to pre-place some Russian mortar troops. So let's call it artillery, and this is a Podnos mortar. We're going to put a couple of these guys down. So let's grab you and you. And we're going to set up some mortar firing targets for these guys. So to make this believable, we want them to get engaged similarly to the hunter killers when they're in the compounds. But we want it to be a little bit more focused. So once the players have breached the compound, as opposed to just being in the area around the compound, is when we want to retaliate with mortar fire. So effectively what will happen in this sort of line of thinking is that when we push a compound, the Russian high command, quote unquote, will be notified that we're attacking the compound, and will retaliate first with mortars, and they'll mortar their own compound because they don't care, they're Russians, and then shortly followed by a QRF of paradrop troops and in some cases vehicles. So to do that, similarly, we're going to place another trigger, but we'll reduce the trigger size so that the players are actually in the compound at this point. We'll make it any player, and instead of detected by op4, we'll make it present. So this is as soon as the players enter this zone, we're going to start taking fire. I suspect that 50 is a bit too much, so we'll reduce the size of this to about 30, and let's make it a rectangle, a little bit more compound shaped. So as soon as the players are sort of like in this general area, it'll trigger the mortar fire. What we need to do then is go to our SAEF module set. So that's again top right systems, down to modules. We'll get artillery physical. So there's only one module for this. We'll place it. So let's say maybe the Russians are a little bit worried about their own. We'll place artillery physical here. We'll say, okay, you're going to retaliate with 4 rounds on this marker. And we'll set the shell type to explosive. Leaving the spread as 0 is probably the best at this point, because when you increase the spread, the AI gets a little bit funny with how they deliver the mortars. Because they are mortars and they're far away, the spread will be quite large as it is, so you could probably leave it like this. So we'll say rounds 4, spread 0 meters on this marker, and then also let's say they're doing bracketing fire, right? They're concerned about their forces in the compound. They want to stop us from pressing any more in there. So we'll put one there and sort of one over there. And then we will sync this guy to a trigger. In fact, we'll sync both of them to a trigger. To say, okay, these must only happen once the trigger's been kicked off. And then we also need to tell these modules what units are going to be using them. So we connect this guy to our first mortar. And similarly, we will connect this guy to our second mortar. So now once we hit that zone, these mortars are going to kick off. They're going to try and bracket us as we're pushing the zone, but hopefully we will be smart enough to know that there are mortars coming in. We'll clear the site. If not, then tough luck. I'm going to do this for a couple of other compounds, so I'm just going to fast forward through that bit, but you get the point. You can use these things for mortar fire support. Okay. So I've placed a couple more mortar positions, one at our larger compound and then one at the biggest town. So these things will just sort of try and retaliate bracketing fire in the general direction outside of the town once we start getting close. So what I'm going to do as well is just take all these guys and throw them into a new folder called mortars. Same with all the triggers involved. And then shift these guys into a new folder called mortar. Oh wait, no, actually, cancel. Let's shift these guys into the mortars itself, and then we're going to move this to a new folder, a subfolder called systems, because we want to leave the mortars visible. We want to know they're there, but we don't want any of these systems to be visible from the mortars. Okay, cool. So we can lock the mortars. We know they're there. We can see they're there. They'll retaliate as we start moving through the area. So that's pretty much all the flavor we need for